Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Cooldown Lap. This is actually a new kind of thing we're going to do here tonight. So we're actually pre-recording this episode for release on the 3rd of March. So next Monday, uh, we're going to have this one. Well, I guess this Monday if you're listening to it tonight, but uh, we're going to have this episode aired. Tonight it's just me sitting in. James is feeling a little under the weather along with Justin Thaler, and I have a guest with me here tonight. So we're just going to kind of talk, and everybody's going to kind of get to know Aaron Holroyd if you don't already know him. So, Aaron, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Anthony, it's good to be here.
Hey, bud. So, you've been involved with our league for quite some time now. You've done quite a few different things, whether it was being in the broadcast booth with James, calling races, or racing in our Cup series. I see you participate in the Road series, which was honestly news to me there for a while. When I seen you passing me in a GT3 car earlier this season, I mic'd up to JT and I'm like, Aaron drives the GT3? How in the world did he pull that off? And he's like, oh yeah, man, the guy loves road racing. So, what other series did you participate in with Midwest Motorsports?
Well, I first joined Midwest Motorsports back when they last time did the GT3s. Before you guys did Formula 3s, and I forget what it was before that, but I joined when it was GT3s because I was looking for a road series, in particular more. And then that folded, and then it started to do the F3, and I think I did like two races. I'm like, I'm out. I can't do these cars. I'm not used to open wheel cars. And then instead of being out, they were like, well, why don't you try doing the trucks? So I'm like, I can do trucks. I started doing trucks on the Friday ones, and I'm like, oh, I'll do Xfinity too. So I did both trucks and Xfinity after I got out of the F3s. So that I think that's about 2 years ago now, maybe two and a half.
Okay, yeah. So if I'm remembering correctly, I think you came in whenever we tried to do a GT3 and GT4 split league before, but everybody kind of signed up for just the GT3s, and eventually we got to a point where we didn't have any GT4s, so it just became a GT3 league, and then they switched to the F3, which was a handful. I personally, I wasn't a huge fan of those cars. I stuck it out, but it's just not my style of racing. Trying to get those things to stick in the corners and such. It's just too high downforce for me. But so you were kind of in that same boat. Not a big fan of the GT, or sorry, not a big fan of the F3s.
Yeah, coincidentally at the time I was it, but since then and coming to what I am now, I've gotten much better equipment. I've got an actual wheel that's meant for that now, and so I actually find myself racing the F3s and even the F4s now on some of my off days when no league races are going on or I have nothing going on. I'm like, oh, I'll hop in the open wheel and just have fun in there. So now I do like the F3s, but it is what it is, and I still love driving the GT3s. They've always been one of my favorite sports cars.
Yeah. So I see you also participate in endurance races in your free time. You had a team that ran in the Daytona 24. How'd that go for you guys?
It went okay. It was a couple of times. I don't. I think I don't remember recalling running it with anybody I ran last year. I know the last one I had, we had six drivers. This one we had five. And I believe Odell might have been number five, or he might have been number six. We fell short, but I ran it with myself, Ian Bacaitis, Walker McNulty, um, David Wortman, and Robert Odell, Michael's brother, I believe it is. And so they all did. They started the Saturday morning race, so I didn't get in till later because I was not around Saturday morning. So I came in more in the evening time. I did a lot of the midnight stuff, so I was up basically from 11:30 till 7 a.m. doing all those stints with Bacardis. I think him and I just did the swap outs, and it went fine. We had everybody kind of had their own issue at one point in the race. with whether it be a solo spin or some extra help into a tire barrier or getting stuck between the barrier, the first international horseshoe between the barrier and the tire wall.
Hmm.
We saw that happen. Our car go dove in and went literally behind the tires. I'm like, that takes some special skill, but that was also in the rain, so it was fine. I don't recall what position we got in, but it was another one of those like experience sort of things, and those are always kind of fun to do.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think you had a team together for Bathurst. Honestly, I don't think many people in the league participate in Bathurst, which would have been the 12 hours. Are there any other endurance races that you're looking forward to this season, possibly participating in?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to do spa. I know that's always a fun one to do because that's I believe that's a is it a 12 2, I believe, or spa 24.
Spa's the 24.
Spa is 24. So I do like Spa. It's a pretty good track. Not so much in the rain though. So we'll see how that pans out because it's bound to happen. Um, as far as team ones, yeah, I did do a solo Daytona one though when the Daytona one was around.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Do you participate in the Nordschleife, or um, do you do the majors 24 out at Lamar at all?
So I don't actually have the Nordschleife yet. I've never actually owned that track. So
Oh,
that's like
wow.
one of the last ones left. Like out of the big ones everybody has, it's probably like the last one left I have to buy. Lamar, I have that. I would like to do that. I forgot off the top of my head. So I know that one comes around some point soon. And then, there's always the other ones. I forget, Sebring. That's always another one that comes around. And even though that's not a favorite track of mine, I still would run it. I mean, I tried to reach out to a couple people and seeing if anyone was doing that. I think everybody kind of just fell through, and it might have just been like the bad weekend for everybody to race.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome, man. That's the usually the hardest thing is getting people together, and up until the time of the race or the day of the race, making sure everybody can participate or at least gets a couple practice laps and feel out the car or the setup and make sure everything's fine. Um, so how's your road season going for you now, man? In the league, are you having fun participating in it, or are you competing pretty well?
Competing very well. I'm not, I'm not up in the not finishing anywhere awesome like I would want to.
Mhm.
Mostly because I mean I just made the switch over from the McLaren to the Corvette again. I did McLaren for an open series and the car was a great time because I could really fix that the understeer problem that car had in the
Mhm.
open setups. But when it's in the fixed setups, that thing is a handle, and I have no idea how Chase Fincher does it, but he manages to drive that car like it's perfect. And so I made the switch over to the Corvette this week and I was like, oh, cool, missing turn one in the turn one at Monza won't be that big of a deal. It's kind of awesome to miss that turn, come out later. And unfortunately, I had a spinning GT4 bounce off a wall and then hit uh, Jack Lucas in front of me, which I hit Jack Lucas shortly after that and had to do a whole fast repair because my front end was obliterated.
Oh, that's rough, man.
So started
Um,
from the back and then kind of just stayed there the whole time. I think I ended up coming back into the pits around 5 minutes left to go because I had done another self spin into the wall. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here now and finish. I'm already in last. Might as well just let it go.
yeah, how's the Tempest system been treating you with whether it's raining or sunshining? Do you have a preference between either running the Tempest or no Tempest, just let it be the sun out?
Um, I like the Tempest because it takes I don't want to say the boredom, but it takes the more of the mundaneness out of the same tracks you run over and over. So like instance, the Daytona track, I think a lot of people look forward to Daytona because it's basically the first motorsport race for a lot of people. Like that's when motorsport starts coming back is the Daytona 24 because then shortly after you have NASCAR starts and then you have the Australian V8 supercars start, and then Formula One starts, then IndyCar starts. So like Daytona, I think is the precedence of like everything starts. So everybody starts running Daytona, and then you kind of get in that zone of like, you can't do much more. you can try to get yourself a tenth or two faster, but then when Tempest gets thrown in, it's like, oh, where does this puddle form up, or where's how do you run this line, or how do you get around these cars when it's raining? And so it adds a different element. It is harder, it's slower, but it also um keeps you more focused. You can't just be like, okay, it's a back straighter, I'm just gonna go straighter. Oh, okay, I'm coming to the pits, just gonna bring it in. When we had a guy coming to the pits and there was literally a river in the middle of the infield coming to the pits, and he happened to hit it and send himself straight into the wall. I'm like, you gotta pay attention to that. Like there, you can look at you saw in the car there's a whole river and you just drove straight into it with your left tires and the whole thing, and that was never gonna work. Like so the next guy came in like, you need to go all the way left right as soon as you come out of turn four. Go next to the wall and stay there to come in the pits. So Tempest is a good addition, harder addition, but I think it fares out a lot of things.
For sure. Some of our fast guys, if they can't pick up the rain aspect of it, where the water lays in the tracks and such, it definitely evens out the field a little. If one of the slower guys can figure out, how to get around with the rain. Um, let's move into the oval side of things for you, man. So you're running the next gen series. So our Cup series every Sunday. You're running that this season. You got the 73. Now it's the National Guard car, correct?
Nope, close enough. Coast Guard though.
Coast Guard. Sorry.
It's fine.
So you're running the Coast Guard car, and there's a tie to that paint scheme, correct? So what makes you want to run that paint scheme?
Um, for the past 16 years, that's what my life's been around. That's what my whole family's been built around is doing the Coast Guard stuff. I joined back in 2009 because at that time it was working at a motorcycle shop and making $300 a paycheck, and 150 of it was going towards gas in my truck, and so 50 of it was going to a cell phone bill, and then I had maybe $100 to do whatever I wanted for 2 weeks. And 2009 didn't have a lot of money for anything. So buddy told me he was taking a test for this thing and said to go try the Coast Guard. You don't go overseas, you stay local, you get the volunteer to go over there, and you have all these options. And they, took the test. They go, what do you want to do? I said, I always wanted to be a cook, but my dad would never pay for like the cordon bleu, and he wouldn't let me take out a loan for that because he thought loans were like the devil because you could never pay them off. So did that. They said, you want to be a cook? Said, sure. That's exactly what I want to do. And they gave me a bonus. Said, okay, off you go. And been doing that since. So went to Minnesota and the Great Lakes, then Southern California, then Oregon, then Florida, then Virginia, and then I just found out this couple weeks ago that I'm actually going to be staying here for 4 more years and rank up to the next class. So I get a bump in pay, and then I get to stay here for 4 years, and then I retire at 40 years old.
Dang, man, that's awesome. So it was it mainly, I guess, was it mainly the possibility at more money and getting to kind of do what you want as far as like making food or becoming a cook or a chef, or was that main your main reason for getting into it? Was there any kind of family ties prior to that in the military that would made you want to serve?
So my grandpa was in the Navy. He did that. He only did a 4 year, so he did his one like little tour and got out.
Hmm.
And then nobody else really did it. And I've always been kind of like, I'd say like a follower slash yes man, where somebody said, "Hey, I need you to do this." I'm like, "All right, I'll get it done." And so having that, and then getting into a structure of like, my whole life is set around times. I have times for everything. My kids have times for everything. It's 6:45. Girls, they go brush their teeth, they go to the bathroom, and I get upstairs to bed by 7, and then they are out by 7:10. Same with my son, and I get up at this certain time every Monday through Friday, and then weekends are all set up, and it's a whole time thing. So I kind of have myself built around a whole structure. And having that job, especially being a cook, you have to be up 2.5 hours earlier than everybody else has to. So you're fired up, ready to go, had your coffee, got your music going, did all your things, and you've been awake, and everybody comes walking out like zombies. And you're like, good morning. And they're like, oh my God. I'm like, nope, time for some breakfast. Here, eat this lovely food. And they're like, oh my God, it's just so good. And so it's the structure and the sense of, they're doing all these other jobs, but my job fuels them for that job. And you can see it in the aspect of when, if you feel crappy about your meal and they see and they taste it and it's crappy too, then that's just a bad start for everybody's day. So you take the initiative of taking something basic, making it better, and give them all options for here. You can customize and have it better yourself. And what can I do to make your day better? So you guys go do your jobs better, and we can get home sooner, or we can go do this sooner, or we can go do a fun thing afterwards, a morale event or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's really what it is, and it's a consistency. Like sometimes it's inconsistent with going out on boats, but these past 4 years I've had different types of schedules. But I've been home. I've watched my kids growing up and learning bikes and drawing. I've got a daughter that draws Pokemon every single day now, or she'll draw Bluey. I've got a kid who now plays Fortnite because I showed him how to play Fortnite. And now he's literally on it every day. And the only bad part is I gotta pay for 2 battle passes now because I want the skins and he wants the skins. And I'm like, shit. Stop.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Dad wants his stuff too. Um, so did you end up going to culinary school along with serving in the Coast Guard as well, or is
The
it
Coast
something like
Guard,
that?
yeah. So the Coast Guard, what they do is for every job you want, they have 13 different rates. Rates are your jobs. Whether you're going to be a damage controlman, which you're in charge of like pipes and stuff, or you're going to be a mechanic, which you're in charge of auxiliary machinery, meaning like the water machines or the electrical machines, or you're going to be part of the other part of the MKs, which are the engines. And so everybody's got their jobs. Mine's a culinary specialist. We've had two names since I joined, and I was food service specialist, and now I'm culinary specialist. So when you pick your job, typically they send you out to the fleet. You go do non-rate slash grunt work where you're swabbing decks and taking out trash and learning what job you want to do, and then you send you to an A school, which is their form of a crash course of college. So you go to school. My school was 13 weeks when I went in. Now it's 18 weeks, and they teach you at square one. You have 2 weeks of learning the stuff from books on your measurements and you know uh, how 4 cups turns into a quart, 4 quarts turn into a gallon. There's 8 pints to a gallon, and all these sort of ways of doing measurements. And then you learn how to cut things. How do you do your 1/8 inch dice, your 1/4 inch, your 1/2 inch, your 3/4 inch, your big dice, and they kind of just show you all these things. And then you get these recipe cards, and then you go through these things that have been around since the dawn of time. They're from the Navy. They're from the Navy, and it's literally a Rolodex of recipes that are specific to the amount for 100 people. So
Wow.
it'll literally say, for beef stew, you need 9 onions and you need 40 pounds of roast beef cut at a 1 inch cut. And so you follow all those. Then they send you back out to the fleet. You go to where you pick on your list and you do what your boss says to do, whether he says, do it this way, or he says, follow this, or he says, find something on your own.
Okay. So, do they issue you a Rolodex then? Like, does everybody get a Rolodex and you just take that with you?
Most units have the Rolodex. It's kind that's like a basic standard, but most days nowadays we just literally go and they'll say we want to do a Brussels sprout. So let's say find me a recipe for Brussels sprouts. So I'll go to the good old Google and type it in. I'll go to either all recipes or you go to,
Yep.
some Southern ladies
Yep.
store and you have to scroll down 45 pages just to get to
Yeah.
the recipe, or because you didn't put the jump to recipe card, which I'm sorry, I'm a big hater of those because there's about 15 ads and 2 hours of scrolling just to get
For
a
sure.
5 item recipe. And I'm like, "God, please get rid of these."
Yep, for sure. I get that. That's awesome, man. I didn't realize that that's how the process went, and that they actually give you Rolodexes on how to make like 100 meals for up to 100 people. Which I mean, I guess it makes sense, but I figured there was somebody in there just telling you like, hey, I'm going to lead this kitchen and this is how it's going to be done. Grab this, and you work on this.
Yeah, it honestly depends on where you're at too. You can go to an 87. So the smallest boat that we have that goes out in the ocean is currently it's an 87-foot patrol boat, which are the ones you see if you go to St. Petersburg or any like of the major ports. You'll see a small white boat that's more like an 87. Now they have the longer ones, which are traveling to, which are the 110s. And when you say numbers, that's the length of the boat.
Hmm.
So 87 is 87 feet long, 110 is 110 feet long. And based on the size of the boat is how many people are. So when I was on my 87 in Florida, we had 11 enlisted, which are what I am, an enlisted member, and then you had one officer who was your captain. So you had 12 people. I'm not going to use that Rolodex. So I would go and shop at, your local Publix, buy stuff to make for enough for 12 people for the day and go so on and so forth. Now in Virginia, I work at a training center for half of the Coast Guard's training units where we feed up to 750 people for lunch. So we
Wow.
have a major galley with 9 or 10 people in there, and we all have a job to do. And it's like, you're in charge of mashed potatoes. Well, you're making 150 pounds of mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
So
That's a lot
it
of
it
mashing,
just
man.
gets it just gets bigger. It's a lot of mashing. We've got literally have 65-gallon steam jacket kettles that boil all of them one time. And you take a big huge blender by hand and you got to mash them all down, and you get a good workout. So while doing that, I now have good workouts for my arm racing for sim racing.
So you can crank the force feedback up, man.
That's
Not notice a
right.
thing.
Things maxed out.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of stuff there that's interesting to hear about. Uh, so back to the oval side of things that we were getting on there, got sidetracked a little. You've been having a pretty quietly successful season is probably the best way I would put it. So, aside from a couple of our races here, Darlington, Dover, and Watkins Glen stick out the most there. Um, Aside from those three races, you've been hovering around the top 10. Daytona, you flirted with a win with a second place. New Hampshire was your next best finish with a fourth place, and Michigan at fifth. And you pepper in some uh, seventh, eighths, and right around 10th place. I mean, you've been having a pretty consistent season. Is there anything that you're doing differently this season as compared to seasons past to kind of keep yourself in that conversation? Do you think maybe a change to the point structure over the last few seasons has kind of made it where more people can have a chance at this? What do you see changing here to help you be a little bit more successful?
I definitely think the point system worked out in a different favor. Now, I know when we were all talking about this last we were all talking about somewhere. I think we were talking about it in like a group chat or whatnot about one of the races that we were hope that if they want to continue doing stage races, which stage races definitely didn't help me because I was not consistent in the top five during stage times. I was trying to play the long game, and I found out quickly that when I was doing that, I was just shooting myself in the foot because I was missing out on valuable points that I wasn't getting.
Hmm.
So the way that the structure changed now to where there's no stages, we have the one caution that's, to me, I feel like it's a little early for the one caution. I get why it's there, but I would sort of like to see it towards the mid to end of a fuel run to kind of base some things off that, because you don't really get a good sense of tire wear at that point. For the most part, you're not changing tires first caution because it's too early to do that, to sacrifice a tire for 9 to 15 laps.
Hmm.
I think if they were to go back to stage racing, I think it would be cool to try to implement it the way that we've been talking about in the Cup Series IRL, and do stages, but don't have a caution for the stages. You say stage ends at lap, if you have 100 laps, stage ends at lap 25 and lap 60. So there's no caution to it, but where you're at in that time, that's the points you're going to get. If you're in the top five, you get 1 point. If you're in first place, you get 5 points. But the race continues on and you don't have a caution unless it's for incident. Um, that would be kind of cool. I think that would make things a little bit more interesting in that aspect if they wanted to bring stage racing back. But for me, it's been more about being patient. definitely not trying to scoop my way through an accident and keep going. I'm just like, you know what, if I'm spinning out, I definitely with these cars now, if you just lock it down, you're going to straighten yourself up.
Hmm.
Especially if you're coming out of turn four, turn two, and you find yourself sideways, smash those brakes and point the car straight, and you're going to go pretty straight really quick. And I try not to save something that's I'm already losing out on. So if I'm already spinning too far, I'm just gonna hold the brakes and lock it down. And if I get a caution, cool. If I don't get one, well, that's my fault for spinning out. Uh, I definitely think it's just been more patience, and we've got a fairly solid group of guys to race around, so I know how to race certain people. And when it's just okay, let them go, they're gonna do their thing, and then I'll worry about my thing later on. And see if I can get some help with the drafting partner or a pusher because I love the big races. Those are my favorite ones, the super speedways. But that's basically because all you have to do is hold the gas the entire time. Um, but yeah, it's been a good season. I was worried about certain things coming up that I might be going away for a couple months for doing work things, but that's gone out the window. So I'm like, oh, I can actually do for the most part an entire season just kind of based off where I'm at there, and just getting more used to it. Getting a new wheels helped, getting better screens, having the bezel eraser, and knowing what things I need on my screen to see and what things I don't need to see. I don't need to see input telemetry for a NASCAR Cup car. I'm I'm going on the gas and I'm hitting the brake a little bit, and that's about it. That's more GT3 side.
Yeah.
Um, so you just kind of, I've got blind spot indicators where it tells me somebody's on the outside, and if I want to take a peek over, I can, hit the button, look over real quick, and see how close I can get to them. And I try never to get too close to somebody, and I figured out how to slow people down when they're next to me now, so that's cool. Really figured out how to slow them down during the draft, and that
Oh
was
yeah.
fun.
Oh man, that is the biggest pain in the butt when you're at like
Side
Talladega or
drafting,
Daytona.
man.
Oh, and somebody side drafts the heck out of you. Like I remember, I want to say it was a season or two ago. I think I was a lap down and I was trying to push the admin train, and a guy, I don't think he's in our league anymore, didn't appreciate me doing that. So he ended up pulling up right next to my car and just took me out of that draft completely. And I was just like, come on, man. I get that, I'm a lap down and stuff. I'm in the draft. Just let me do my thing. And then that
Yeah,
side draft is wicked, man. I remember the first time somebody told me that side draft didn't exist.
yeah,
They said that they couldn't replicate it with iRacing, like the physics just aren't there. And in the old Gen 6 car, like you could go on the outside lane and be the only car there and still make up ground using that side draft.
correct.
And that was even the Xfinity car, that was eye-opening for me. Like I'm like, I didn't think this was supposed to work, but I'm still holding my own out here on my own. So
Yeah, you got five guys on your inside, and you're on the outside pulling up on them. It's like how?
yeah, how does this work? But the thing with the side draft is, man, you gotta have some faith and trust that that guy that you're side drafting isn't gonna sneeze,
Yes.
isn't gonna drift. Like you put a lot of trust in knowing the person that you're side drafting is gonna hold a steady wheel. I tell you somebody that in the cup series that is really good at side drafting. I mean, sometimes it infuriates me that this guy side drafts me, but Prince.
Oh yeah,
Uh yeah,
Clarence
Clarence Prince. Yeah, like I
is a
remember
nightmare.
oh man, I remember there was a couple races like we'd be going into the corner and he'd start that outside line and just right next to my door, and I'm like, "Oh man." I was like, I am terrible at holding a straight line with somebody like right next to me, and he's like side
Yes.
drafted me, and I'm just like, "Oh man, come
I
on, Clarence, cut me a break."
Yeah, that goes back to with knowing who you're racing too. Like, it's nice to have a league where you've mostly talked to everyone. You may not get along perfectly well with everybody, but you've kind of got that racing thing going where, and you see people who are making changes on how, you know, like Sean Cunningham, he qualified pole on Michigan. I'm like, holy cow, I've seen him do like fourth and fifth, but he qualified pole. He qualified better than Cotton, than JT, than you. I mean, me.
He laid a heater.
He laid a mean lap. I'm like, wow, good for him. Like he's figured something out towards getting him good pace. And I was dreading after practice. I'm like, I'm 14th out of 17. I'm like, this is gonna be
Hmm.
miserable. And I'm like, you know what? Just run what I do. Just do my race. Don't worry about everything else. And I came out with the fifth. I'm like, I will take that any day. I felt awful going into this race, but a five, if that's my worst day today, that's great.
Yeah. Real quick, before I move on to another point about Michigan, speaking of that fifth place finish, somebody felt a little slighted that eh, they believe you may have cost them a position or two throwing a late block.
Yeah, goes back to JT. So I look back at it now and I'm like, you know what? He was right. I didn't think of that. My whole thought was he's gonna make a move to my inside. I gotta try to hold it off. You know, he had pushed me for a while, and I pushed somebody else for a while, and him and I kind of went back and forth with pushing. And I'm like, if he makes his move to the inside, then he's gonna have Thayer behind him, and Thayer's gonna push him. And he was like, "No, you dumb dumb. I wanted you to go up high like you had been, so I could slow him down, and then you can come up and I could draft off you, and we could both beat him." I'm like, wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking trying to get fifth. He's like, "You dummy." I'm like, "I know, thank you."
Yeah.
So it just, now it's something I can go look forward to in the future. Where if that situation comes up, it's like, okay, well, if I do hold this out high line, I will have the speed coming out of the turn. He may get next to me, but I'm going to have the overall speed coming out. And it's one of those like, oh, learning moment. Like, oh, okay, it's things you pick up on after racing with somebody for 2.5 years.
Yeah, that is the nice thing about league racing. You get to know these guys, like when I come up and bump you down a backstretch, I'm just drafting you. I ain't telling you to move or anything. I'm just coming up, giving you a little bump down the backstretch, which at Michigan, you and I were able to do quite a bit. I know you got behind me and we'd hold that outside line when Phelps was going down low to try and pass. I'd stick up
Yeah.
high so I could pull you up.
Yep.
Because I was like, the last thing I want is this guy coming up and uh, pulling a slide job on Aaron and then slide me in the corner. So I was like, it's going to benefit us because Aaron's content sitting there. It's going to
Yeah.
benefit us for me to just ride there and pull Aaron along.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm just clicking laps, man. I don't need to win a race right now. I'm just trying to get through this race and get my 0x and get my decent finish and call it from there. And I don't know how he was able to dive it in there so far. I kept seeing that 57 nose popping there. I'm like, good God, this guy's scaring the crap out of me.
Yeah, there were a couple of moments there where I was like, man, he's sending it, sending it, sending it. I
Yeah.
was like, don't wash up. And then he'd be able to just pull it up right next to you. But that draft on the outside was able to pull that line. So
Yeah.
um going back to what you were saying about Michigan and having a rough start. In practice, I kind of felt the same way because I think I was like 13th place in the speed charts.
Yeah.
Somehow I was able to pull off like a fifth or sixth place qualifying lap. And from there, it was basically learning the track. And I feel like that's the nice thing about not having stage racing in a way is you have an entire race to kind of build your speed.
Yeah.
And if you're starting off slow, it's probably not that bad because you can kind of take care of the tires subconsciously because you aren't burning them with speed.
Yep.
But being able to kind of build your race from start to finish, and with these long green flag runs, you're able to kind of put in a body of work to get yourself a solid finish, even when you have a bad practice. So that's the one thing I'm enjoying about this season.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like when you start a race and you have those tires and you go through and you burn them up after you change them after your 20 or something laps and you get a full fuel new set of tires and then you do that twice, for some reason I still feel like that at the end of the race like the car has changed more. I don't know if it's the whatever that effect is that I forget the name of it, but it's like when you're thinking of something and you're making it happen because you're thinking of it. But I feel like the car drives differently with the same brand new tires, full fuel, but you've done 80 laps on it. It's probably because of the track temperature and all that stuff. I'm just thinking out loud, but it's nice knowing that you can run that whole race and not have to stop you know, at 20 laps and 60 laps, and now you're like, oh, I've only done 20 laps here, 40 laps. Now we have another 50 laps, and I don't know
Mm.
how to figure that stuff out now. I don't know how to make this stretch, and it's nice. It's nice figuring out the stretching techniques, and I think, oh, you know what? Now go back to Dover. I quit out of Dover because I didn't hit the fuel button. That's another recent change I did where I turned off all those things, so I have to physically hit a button now. And I
Yep.
came in and did not hit the button, and I ran out of fuel coming out of turn two, and I'm like, hmm.
You,
So
you
that's why my Dover race was bad. Now I
you
remember.
you borrowed Eric Thaler's crew chief for the day. He's had that
That's
happen a
right.
couple.
That's he's either Midwest Motorsports magnet or fuel forgetter.
Exactly. So going and looking forward, we have Martinsville this upcoming Sunday in the Cup
Oh boy,
Series, and then we head to Talladega, which I
that's
know Talladega is like your bread and butter.
that's the ticket. What I'm looking for. That's the. Uh, I know Talladega can be a lot of people's bread and butter. But with both races, Martinsville and Talladega, like we all have to be mindful. Like we have 250 laps at Martinsville. Take the
Hmm.
time. I will be absolutely blown away if we come out with somebody has a 0x. If that's even possible, good on them. But for both races, it literally comes down to the same thing: is just be patient. There's an entire race to go on. 250 laps is a long time. Just click them down. Run your race. Don't rush to get in the lead, and somebody else has to rush to get into the lead as well. And
Hmm.
with Daytona, man, just you guys line up two by two, then you can just sit there and run two by two. One person in the top lane, one grooves in the bottom lane. You just go back and forth. There's been some races I think we had one caution. I'm like, that's amazing. We had one caution. That race was so fast. Good job. And then there's other races like this thing just needs to be over. Please, God, end it.
Yeah. Um, and we have the addition of a third super speedway track on April 6th. We're going to the new Atlanta.
Oh yeah, they just did that one in officials, I believe it was. And I tell you what, those things move.
We ran the new Atlanta one season, and it was terrifying. Like you're at super speedway racing where it's pack racing, but the track's so short that you're constantly on your toes, like watching for people passing you, trying to set up lines. And in all honesty, it's a bit overwhelming for the senses, that track. So that's going to be a very interesting race to see how people take it, and exactly how many cautions we can come out there with.
Now, is it new Atlanta with
No,
the
no,
like the new repave that they did IRL?
brand new. Whatever the newest Atlanta is on iRacing,
Okay, so
it's
I
the
got that
super speedway package.
perfect because I mean that's again, it's just be patient. I mean, you don't have there's no stage races, no rush to get to the front and lead the whole lap. Like you don't yeah, you guess you get one for the most laps of that. So if you want that point for that, go for it. But uh there's so much time in these races, like 130 laps at Atlanta. We have 250 at Martinsville. We have 94 laps on a how long's a lap usually? A minute and a half? A minute
Where's
for
this at?
Talladega?
You're looking at about 50, 52 seconds, I'd say, in the
i-
draft.
in the draft. So yeah, if you get caught out of the draft, good luck. But
Yeah.
if you get caught out of the draft, just wait for the draft to catch you and fall in with them. At some point, there's might be a caution, and guess what? You're lucky dog.
Oh, there's one thing I want to say for anybody that listens to this before we go to Talladega. If you and three other cars, and all three of you guys listen to this, if you and three other cars fall out of the draft, form a line, push each
Yes.
other, and catch the pack, because what we see is people just don't draft together. Once they fall out of the draft, they start racing each other, and you lose way more time that way. Have somebody stick down on the yellow line, the other two guys fall in behind, let the middle guy push, back guy follow, and you guys should be able to catch the draft. But um, so we're going to move on to one last point here. I've taken up quite a bit of your time, but we're gonna move on to one last point here, and then we'll wrap up the podcast. So, James, like I said, couldn't be here. He's feeling under the weather tonight, so he actually sent over some things he wanted me to tell you. So he said, I had great fun broadcasting with Aaron, and he really helped me bring more humor to the broadcast. Thanks for helping me realize that we can keep things light in the booth and still tell the story of the race. He also wanted to tell you that you have been doing great racing in both the oval and road series. Um, so let's talk real briefly about your broadcasting stint there with James. Did that start in the road series?
I believe it did start in the road series because I would say it was either road series or it might have been in trucks. I started it with trucks with him because I wasn't racing trucks anymore, but I wasn't able to race, but I still wanted to do things. I think I was getting like a burnout at that time. Um,
Mm,
and then I started doing uh, the road series with him when they were doing the GT4. You guys did just a GT4 series, didn't you, for like a
yep.
season and a half? Okay, so I started doing that with him, and then I was like, you know what? If he's doing trucks and we're both doing the road series, I'm like, nobody's doing Cup, and Cup's supposed to be our best thing. I can't do Saturdays because I got busy things going on there. I'm like, but I can do Cups and start that off because I'm like, these are supposed to be like it's supposed to be one of our higher leagues outside of road racing. I'm like, the Cup guys don't get any broadcasts. I'm like, I'll start there, and I started doing that, and he would work cameras, and then, um, Adam joined in, and then James would kind of do more of the side gig with me at Cup, and then I started getting like the itch again because at that point Xfinity had closed down, and I can't race trucks and I wasn't doing GT4. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to be doing anything. I'm like, I at least want to start doing cup and stuff. Like I've done a couple of races here and there, but I want to start doing an actual race thing now. And so I kind of felt bad for basically dropping him into or bringing him into cup and almost semi-formally forcing him to take it now because at that nobody had done cup before, so he kind of didn't want to like leave it hanging, so he wanted to keep doing it. And I think, I believe Michael Harris is doing it with him now, so that's awesome that he's got that person in the booth with him, and it's more fun to have two people because you get two different perspectives. And um even if the person, I think Harris has a bunch of the tracks, he can even be in the session and catch certain things that may have happened that the broadcast wasn't showing. So he's able to show, this person had an accident on this lap, and they can find it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's definitely more fun to have two people in there. He came up with his slogan of "Stay in your lane," and I was doing "Choo Choo" for a little bit because of train racing we had going. Um, but I didn't want him to get so I didn't want it to get so monotone and like Eugene Levy style where it's just talking and look at the past and this is happening and this and that. So I try to be lively, and we tried to crack jokes and make each other laugh during a race, and he got me a couple of times. I don't think I ever got him. So I'm glad that we had a good time together, and I hope at some point my schedule loosens up, and if the GT3 racing doesn't pan out for me too much, next season or whatnot, I can come back and join him there and have more fun with him and see what comes up in the future, because I like that time we had together, and it was fun to talk with him, and just shooting the S with each other was always awesome.
For sure. You brought up a good point about Michael helping out, and I just want to shamelessly plug something real quick if you haven't seen it, but anybody listening, if you haven't watched the Michigan Cup race uh, uh, session on YouTube, go back and watch that. They actually there was so much action that they were able to catch on the track. And Aaron, I don't know if you've got to see it or not, but
Oh,
it
you're talking
was
about your 6-person pass? I saw that.
no, not just that, but I was amazed at how well we were able to keep the pack together. Like
Yes.
first through what 10th place, we're basically all within a second of each other. And I was looking at the ticker at points in that race, and it was like eighth, ninth place was like 6 tenths back, and I'm like, is that thing glitching out? And then they'd go back and they'd like show like the field, and I'm like, wow, we were all on top of each other, and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
So they did a great job calling that race. It was fun to watch, and the racing that was put on at Michigan was definitely a spectacle. So if you guys didn't get to watch that, go back and watch it. It was really good. So Aaron, before we end this, man, we go through and we like to ask each of our guests what they would change if they were in the captain seat for a day. So let's say that Eric, the godfather of Midwest Motorsports, comes down, hands you the keys to the castle for a day. What's one thing you would change?
Yeah, I noticed he changed my paint scheme on his car. Thanks, Eric. But no, it tracks. He's I just thought of the boss and Godfather suits him much better because I've heard James use that a lot. So I like the paint scheme. I approve of his message. And um, I mean, as far as changing things, I think that if they did want to do some sort of stage thing and kind of use us as like, hey, this could actually work in real life. I think if we did the cautionless stage bonus points, um, and maybe moved the mandated caution to the 25th percent of the. I don't know how it's labeled now. Um, I just find that I think the first caution is fairly early. Fairly early. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I just think it's a little earlier than it should be. So that would be my thing is push the mandatory caution back 10%. And if you want to try it next season, do do cautionless stage endings.
Okay.
So
So okay.
so
Well,
so you keep racing. You're still
oh yeah.
racing for long term, but now you have something to race for, not just racing to the yellow flag, which I know it's hard to do. Where when especially when that caution comes out, it comes out immediately, and like for everybody else that's behind it, well, you can't pass the guy in front of you because there's a caution. I think some people lose track of that. So I've seen people go fly by me when the caution comes. I'm like, there's a caution, right?
Yeah.
And then they need the
Uh,
black flag cleared.
yeah. So I want to pick your brain on that a little bit more after the podcast. So
Yeah.
now we'll talk a little bit.
Okay.
Because I'll run some scenarios by you. But so we're gonna wrap the podcast up with that, guys. Thanks for listening in. Aaron, thanks for joining here tonight. It was a pleasure having you. I get to learn a little bit more about you and talking about your past experience here at Midwest Motorsports.
Thanks for having me.
Problem, buddy. So guys, again, you'll be hearing this on the third, so this Monday. Um, Martinsville race would have came and gone. We'll be back in the studio doing a live edition the following week, so March 10th. I do believe we have a guest in for that one as well, so we'll keep you guys updated if anything changes. But until then, everybody have a great week, have some great racing, and in the infamous words of James, stay in your lane.
Choo choo.